Hello friends. After the strict rules of China, today we jump onto our horses and travel to the endless steppes of Central Asia, to the pregnant life of the nomadic Turks. My life as a nomad meant constant movement and a harsh climate. Therefore, pregnancy was not a moment of weakness, but rather a sacred period requiring the most magic and protection. I never took off my wolf tooth amulet from my neck to protect my baby from evil spirits, and I blessed the cauldron when labor began. You will be astonished when you learn about these interesting rituals of the Turks, if you're ready. Let's get into the video, but first, remember, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss future historical lives. Pregnancy among nomadic Turks was the period in a woman's life that required the most protection. The steppe was a habitat not only for people but also for evil spirits, albasta shaitan, and these spirits would especially afflict pregnant women and newborns. Therefore, as a pregnant woman, I constantly needed protection. My most important protector was the amulet made of a wolf tooth. Since the wolf was a strong, brave, and protective animal in Turkic totemism, anything made from its tooth or hide was a powerful charm that protected the baby's soul. I carried these amulets around my neck, and this gave me both physical and spiritual strength. Furthermore, during the long migrations spent on horseback, I wore a special and tight belt to protect against the danger of falling and jolting. My life, during these difficult journeys, depended not only on the strength of my husband and the tribe, but also on these magical protections. This was a combination of spiritual and physical power. As a nomad, birth could often occur unexpectedly and during travel. Therefore, it was mandatory to be quick and quiet. One of the most important rituals for an easy birth was the blessing of the cauldron, the most sacred item of the tribe. In Turkic culture, the cauldron was a central symbol representing life and abundance, bringing the family together. When labor pains began, the midwife or an elderly woman would put water into the cauldron and recite special prayers. This ritual aimed to transfer the cauldron's power and abundance to the birth. My life would be eased by the power of these sacred ceremonies. This meant that although I didn't have the comfort of a modern hospital, I could rely on the power of nature and the community. Furthermore, during labor, ropes and knots made of horsehair were used to increase or decrease the pains. This was a practical shamanic act to control the birth. The first 40 days after birth were known as the Kurklama, 40-day cleansing period among the Turks. And this was the period when the mother and baby were most vulnerable, thus requiring the most ritual protection. It was believed that evil spirits, like albasta, would kidnap newborn babies. Therefore, a sharp piece of iron knife or arrowhead would be hung near the baby's cradle swing. Iron was believed to have the power to ward off evil spirits. Furthermore, the mother and baby were required to be washed with water 40 times 40 baths. This was both a physical and spiritual cleansing. My life, during these first 40 days, was spent almost entirely inside the yurt. The outside world was a great threat to my baby's health. These protection rituals showed us the harshness and deadly threats of nomadic life. Surviving this period was a great victory for both mother and child. During pregnancy, the foods the mother should eat also had a ritual significance. To give birth to a healthy and strong baby, the mother was encouraged to consume horse meat, kumi's fermented mare's milk, and especially sheeptail fat kairak yaki. Horse meat would give the baby the horse's strength and speed, kumi's endurance, and tail fat protection and energy against harsh winters. In contrast, eating the meat of cowardly animals like rabbits was strictly forbidden, as it was believed that the baby would also be cowardly. My life was strictly adhered to these nutritional rules. This was not just a physical diet, but also a ritual that shaped my baby's character. This diet showed the deep belief in the animals and their totemic power that formed the basis of nomadic life. Immediately after the baby's birth, the umbilical cord, sometimes the navel string, was carefully cut and kept. Where the cord was buried or what it was kept with would determine the child's future profession and character. If the cord was buried in or near a horse stable, it was believed that the child would be a good horse rider and warrior. If buried near a bookstand, they would be a scholar or shaman. This was the nomadic version of Taijao in China. My life was filled with the belief that I could determine my child's future role and place in society with such rituals. This was a deep philosophy of nomadic culture that associated the child's destiny with nature and profession. Where the cord was buried symbolized the dreams the family had for that child. This was the greatest source of hope in my life. Among nomadic Turks, pregnant women were strictly forbidden from going to graveyards or dark places. This stemmed from the belief that contact with death and underworld spirits, the domain of Erlik Khan, the underworld god, would harm the baby's soul. Since a pregnant woman carried the future of the family, she had to be protected from even the slightest spiritual contamination. My life during this period required me to avoid going outside the tribe's settlement area, especially after sunset. This was a taboo intended for both physical safety and spiritual protection. This taboo also aimed to protect the mother's peace and tranquility, because despite the hardships of nomadic life, a peaceful state of mind meant a healthy baby. Dark places were seen as where evil spirits laid in ambush. At the end of the Kurklama period, the first 40 days after birth, celebrations like the cradle ceremony, Bihikt, and the first tooth ceremony, Dik Bolguru, would be held for the baby. In the cradle ceremony, the baby would be given its first cradle swing and blessed with prayers by the elders of the tribe. In the first tooth ceremony, when the baby's first tooth came out, a specially prepared food, tooth bulgur or soup, would be offered to the entire tribe. These celebrations symbolized the baby's acceptance into the community and wishes for healthy growth. My life would once again understand the solidarity of the tribe and the value given to the child through such joyful ceremonies. These ceremonies were not just a celebration, but also a communal ritual that strengthened the baby's spiritual protection. These rituals were proof of a strong and unchanging cultural bond, despite the constant mobility of nomadic life. During pregnancy, it was strictly forbidden for the mother to spit into the fire or throw something dirty into the fire. In Turkic beliefs, fire Odiana was a sacred and purifying entity that had to be respected. Defiling the fire would endanger both the tribe's luck and the health of the mother and baby. Disrespecting the fire would lead to the wrath of Odiana and could cause the baby to be born with a mark or birthmark on its face. My life was constantly spent paying attention to such small, yet vitally important taboo rules. This showed us how much nomadic life was based on respect for natural elements, fire, water, earth. This rule also served as a practical hygiene rule, encouraging the mother to be careful about cleanliness and the environment. Among nomadic Turks, one way to protect the mother and baby's health was to perform special rituals against the fear of the Al-Bazmask Al-Spirit attack. Al-Bazmask was the belief in a malevolent female spirit, Al-Bazdar, that would afflict mothers and babies, especially during the postpartum period. It was believed that this spirit would cause the milk to dry up or steal the baby's soul by touching the mother's breast. To be protected, a bread knife and an onion would be placed next to the mother's head. The sharpness of the knife and the strong smell of the onion would ward off Al-Bastar. My life was a constant struggle against these invisible threats. These rituals were not just a belief, but also a support system that allowed the mother to feel psychologically safe. These rituals showed the mother's desperation during the postpartum period and the community's effort to protect her. Among nomadic Turks, the importance of having children was immense. Therefore, infertility or the inability to conceive was seen not only as a physical problem, but also as a spiritual problem that required the intervention of the shaman Khan. A woman who could not conceive would undergo a series of rituals with medicinal herbs, special prayers, and drum rituals. The sound of the shaman's drum would call the spirits. The purpose of these rituals was to ward off the bad energy in the woman's soul and bring her the spirit of fertility, abundance from Ana. My life, under the pressure of having children, sometimes required participating in desperate shamanic rites. This was similar to modern IVF treatments, but a completely spiritual journey. The shaman would try to bring the baby's soul from the underworld. These rituals showed the importance given to women's fertility for the continuation of nomadic life. During the baby's birth, a series of inappropriate sounds and ritual movements would be made by the midwife elderly woman. These sounds and movements were meant to distract evil spirits and draw them away from the woman giving birth. The midwife would loudly sing songs, make strange noises, and even tell funny or disgusting stories, especially when labor pains intensified. Although this is a strange method for a modern midwife, according to Turkic belief, evil spirits liked seriousness and avoided anything funny or disgusting. My life would be lightened by such ritual jokes from the midwife during those critical and painful seconds of birth. These rituals showed that the moment of birth itself was a theater and a game of deception with the spirits. This was a striking example of the spiritual aspect of nomadic life serving a practical purpose. As a pregnant woman, I had to be protected not only from evil spirits but also from the evil eye Nazar. Nomadic Turks believed that the evil eye could cause great harm to a pregnant woman or an unborn baby. Therefore, I would try to keep my pregnancy as secret as possible. When my belly started to become noticeable, I would sew blue beads, horseshoes, and amulets made by pouring lead into my clothes. The blue bead was considered the most powerful evil eye repellent in Turkic culture. My life was spent in a constant act of concealment and protection. This was the exact opposite of a modern woman announcing her pregnancy on social media. This secrecy ensured that the baby's soul was protected from the jealousy of the outside world. This was a fundamental act of caution at the heart of nomadic life. After birth, the moment the mother and baby would go outside for the first time was celebrated with the Atasi Grkl grandparents visit ritual. This was a ceremony where the baby was seen and blessed for the first time by the tribe's elders. During this visit, the elders would sprinkle Ork Bulakan Su healing water on the baby. This was done with the wish that the baby would be long-lived, healthy, and wise. Ork Bulakan Su was considered the purest water source. My life, with this ceremony, would officially step not only into the role of motherhood but also into the responsibility of raising the next generation of the tribe. This ceremony showed the belief that the greatest strength of nomadic life was the protection provided by the wisdom of the elders and the spirits of the ancestors. The elders touching the baby ensured the transfer of wisdom from them. Among nomadic Turks, the mother was expected to perform purification rituals during the postpartum Kurklama period, such as jumping over fire. This ritual would help the woman regain the spiritual energy she lost during childbirth and be cleansed of evil spirits. Fire not only provided warmth, but also served as a spiritual purifier. The mother would usually jump over a small fire 3 or 7 times. This was a fundamental practice of nomadic shamanism. My life required proving that I was ready to return to the community with such dangerous and physically challenging rituals. This ritual was a demonstration of complete surrender to nature and spiritual powers, which was part of nomadic life. Passing through the fire symbolized the mother's rebirth, both physically and spiritually. To influence the baby's future character, the mother was advised to wear specific colored clothes during pregnancy. Red and blue were the most common and important colors. Red represented life, strength, and protection against evil. Blue represented the sky, Tengri, the sky, God, and long life. Wearing these colors was intended to transfer these positive qualities to the baby's soul. My life was surrounded by bright and vibrant colors during this period. Every piece of clothing carried a wish and a prayer for my baby's future. This showed the nomadic Turks' belief in invoking spiritual powers through nature and colors. Wearing dark colors and black was avoided, as it was believed that they attracted evil spirits. This color symbolism was an integral part of the visual culture of nomadic life. If a woman had a stillbirth or miscarriage during pregnancy, this was seen as the result of a spiritual attack, and the woman was under black magic. Following these losses, a shamanic cleansing purification ceremony would immediately be performed to ward off the evil spirits afflicting the mother and the tribe. The woman would be isolated in a special tent, and the shaman would purify her by burning incense and special herb smokes Harmal, Peganum, Harmala around her. My life would be spent under the spiritual fear and social stigma brought by such devastating losses. These rituals aimed to restore not only the mother's health, but also the collective spiritual health of the tribe. This purification process showed the fragility of nomadic life and the vital role of the shaman within the community. To keep the baby's soul cut strong, the mother had to pay attention even to her sleeping position during pregnancy. Lying on one's back and crossing the arms over the chest was strictly forbidden. This could cause the baby's soul to be trapped, or the mother's soul to get lost in her sleep. The most ideal position was lying on the side with arms relaxed. This would allow the spiritual energy of the mother and baby to flow freely. My life required constant attention and discipline even in night sleep during this period. This was a spiritual equivalent of a modern woman's search for an ergonomic mattress, since it was believed that the soul could leave the body in sleep. The correct position would facilitate the soul's return. This rule showed how intertwined every moment of nomadic life was with spiritual beliefs. Among nomadic Turks, birth had to be as quick and quiet as possible. Since the tribe had to be constantly on the move, it was undesirable for the birth to disrupt a migration or daily tasks. The midwife would lightly tap the mother's belly or place a sword or bow on her to accelerate the pains. This was a symbolic act for the baby to come out quickly. The sword or bow would also frighten and drive away evil spirits. My life, in this fast and tough pace of birth, required not only endurance but also silence. This showed that the practicality and warrior spirit that formed the basis of nomadic life were reflected even at the moment of birth. A quick birth was vital for the safety of both the mother and the tribe. After birth, the remaining placenta, after the umbilical cord was cut, would be disposed of with a great ritual, but this was different from China. The placenta would usually be thrown into a water source, river, lake, or well. This was done with the wish that the baby would be as dear and abundant as water. Water was the source of life and purification in Turkic beliefs. Delivering the placenta to the water meant giving the baby under the protection of Tengri, the sky god, and the water mother, Suai, Yse. My life, with this ritual, would surrender my baby's spiritual destiny to the strongest and most abundant elements of nature. This ceremony showed the deep and spiritual connection of nomadic life with the natural elements around it. The placenta meeting the water symbolized the beginning of a new life. Among nomadic Turks, another important ritual was the mother not sleeping in the yurt tent of a foreign woman during pregnancy. Sleeping in another tent could transfer that tent's spiritual energy and potential bad luck to the baby. Therefore, even during migration, I would take care to sleep in my own yurt or my family's yurt. This rule was not only a spiritual taboo, but also showed the importance nomads attached to their individual and familial identities. My life was filled with the obligation to protect such spiritual boundaries. This showed us how uncertain and risky life outside the tribes was seen. The sanctity of my own yurt was my baby's spiritual shield. That's it. My life as a pregnant woman among nomadic Turks in Central Asia was spent with harsh migrations on horseback, the protection of wolf-tooth amulets, and the fear of albaster during the Kurklama period. This was a much more demanding and nature-intertwined process than a modern mother could imagine. If you enjoyed this journey through weird history, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the future stories of my life, perhaps the pregnancy traditions of the Vikings.
Halt selkişkirini Hochten gerindor Bidu zok soçu ben Motten dondu sudir toguduca togu kalın dult sitti gilamaran Ertni dudığı zurhendimin hattığılına Marimin tengirin dağdağı hicben Tengirin dardağı hicben Bitniyem bitnizam Eftenigen soltnilen Çuduni dondur galı olursa Tuhin murte izdağına Elsin der muruldu diç Homin ayıl goksal hiç zoğurdunun gursunu İrirdit halı bağına Marimin tengirin dağdağı hicben Tengirin dardağı hicben Erhim sons bitni don Hangen olsin sons doğuç ben Halon oramda kalır şattıcır ben Bitni doğ havlay nigin ayılgo Arçlan gidin zor kendi turç ben Mormen tengirin darada bir gece ben Tengirin darada bir gece ben Eftenigen soltnile Merinin tengirin dardağı hicben Tengirin dardağı hicben Bitniyem bitnizam Evtenigin soltnilen Yazgar salhyar şimneni Hundur olsun sudirt bitni murzamharın Tengirmin amar tayvan ogu тэнгэрэлд бидний зүрх цохилно эцэг өгдийн сүн сэнд байна сахны тунд бидний харж байна Өгдийн сүнс биднийг харж байна тэнгэр минь амар тайван нүгөө тэнгэрийн дор алсын нуусан цан сал хишин зэнзэн андал зүрхний цохилд эх дэлхий тайд гаралугаж бидний хайрла биднийг сүнс эцэг өгдийн It's a good thing. химэртэй салхир сэтгэл амгүйлэн